Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. And thanks, Chris. You almost took all of the words out of my mouth. Because really, I'm here not so much to talk to you about World Vision and my real job, but actually more my passion, which is the Humanitarian Logistics Association. Very similar to the IAPHL, but for humanitarian logisticians. We started for very, very similar reasons to those that Chris described. You know, there isn't a professional association that's suitable for humanitarian logisticians. And so I think about 10 years ago, in fact, just after the tsunami, the network that I'm involved with among humanitarian logisticians around the world decided that really what we needed to do was to build more recognition for humanitarian logistics and supply chain, because programmatically it wasn't a valued function. And we felt that there was a need to sort of build from the bottom up rather than try and dictate from the top down. And in order to create recognition for humanitarian logisticians, we came up with this idea for the HLA. And I think the difference that we have between HLA and IAPHL is that we decided to make it into a standalone entity, and we registered it as a charity. I'll come more on to that later. But essentially also, because supply chain management accounts for perhaps as much as 80% of costs when there is a humanitarian emergency operation, we felt that really there's a huge amount that needs to be done, and we have done, but a huge amount more that needs to be done to build that value proposition, that recognition for a professional logistics person in the aid world. So we set up the HLA as a charity in 2009, and we thought that it was important to ensure that, we make sure that we focus on this issue of professionalization. I suppose one of the things that I would like to come back to later on is, what do we really mean by professionalization, and how can we effectively collaborate? It strikes me here today and also yesterday talking about the demand. You know, what is the demand? How do we create the demand for a professional logistics person in public health or humanitarian logistics? In terms of governance, I mentioned that we set up the HLA as a charity. We have a broad range of board members, including representation from the commercial sector, because we want to make sure that there's proper alignment with good business practice, but at the same time ensure that there's a good understanding as to what the differences are between commercial logistics and humanitarian logistics or public health logistics. And we also want to make sure that there's a representational advisory committee that's based in different parts of the world, so that we can draw on different disciplines from different elements of the aid sector. And so we're currently working on reforming that advisory group. So if any of you are interested in being on that advisory group, please let me know. In terms of membership, we don't quite have as many members as IAPHL, but we do have a similar number of sort of informal members through the LinkedIn social media sites, about 3,000 and growing. And our graph of membership growth is really very similar to the one that Chris showed. You know, huge and increasing demand quite recently over the last couple of years, showing that there's real demand first from our community of practice for knowledge, access to information, the latest thinking, latest innovations. So, it's really fills me with a lot of hope that we can actually, grow further and become more sustainable, because at the moment we also rely on volunteers to support this community of practice, and the contribution from the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, which kindly hosts the the HLA, similar to JSI hosting IAPHL. So in terms of activities, again, quite similar to the ones that Chris described for public health, similar sorts of online discussion going on through social media principally, and informal contacts around, warehousing, and almost identical to IAPHL discussions, but replace public health with humanitarian, and it's pretty much similar. But we also try and make sure that we organize face-to-face events where we can in different parts of the world among our focus groups in certain hubs like Bangkok or Nairobi, and we want to build on that sort of face-to-face contact as well, which is also very, very valuable to share knowledge and share experience and learning. So in terms of promoting learning and research, we also have strong linkages with a number of universities around the world, particularly in the US and in the UK and Europe, but now increasingly in Asia. And that's an area of the world where I notice also in this forum there's a slight underrepresentation of our colleagues in Asia. Very, very focused, of course, on the needs in Africa and Latin America, perhaps, but really we need to be also looking to the huge needs that exist in Asia. And so we have a good relationship there with the University of Singapore, which is doing some excellent research into humanitarian logistics, and I'm sure that they would be interested in the issues around public health there too. So that's something that we can think about further. And what do we mean by professionalization? I mentioned earlier. These are some suggestions that we could consider, and perhaps there are more ideas as to what we could come up with in terms of a definition of a humanitarian or public health logistics professional. But it's really comes back to competence. It's great to be able to talk about the need for formal education, which we touched on today or yesterday particularly too. But really we need to be talking about creating a competent professional. And linking to that also the need to have a clearly defined career pathway. And I know that I think it was Rebecca Bailey yesterday was talking about a career pathway framework. Similarly, we want to create a career pathway for humanitarian logisticians. And I think that if we can collaborate, perhaps between HLA and IAPHL, I think that we can come up with quite a robust and well-recognized career pathway that perhaps can then describe more clearly to potential employers what we mean by a certified professional logistician, what are the different levels of that certified professional logistician, and how does that professional logistician become a professional? What are these different entry points? We've been working with, or the community of practice really has been working for a number of years with the Fritz Institute and CILT to create a certification program for humanitarian logisticians. And the first course, it's a correspondence course essentially, that went live was in 2006, the Certificate in Humanitarian Logistics, followed by in 2008 the Certificate in Humanitarian Supply Chain Management, together with the Certificate in Medical Logistics, MEDLOG. And the uptake in those trainings has been really encouraging. Overall, we have over 2,400 people have been involved in one way or another in this certification program. And one thing that we would like from this community, I think, is more recognition and uptake, involvement, and indeed advice on MEDLOG, because that is, although it's focused on emergency medical logistics perhaps, but many, many similarities with all of the topics that we've been addressing at this conference. The other thing I think it was interesting to me yesterday, I think Carol from iPlus Solutions was talking about e-learning and the idea behind introducing electronic badges that recognize a certain competence or training. And similarly, we are in HLA hoping to develop what we're calling the Passport Project, which is essentially a sort of a portfolio of evidence to demonstrate competence. And that could be an online electronic passport, again, that promotes better recognition. And if we can build broad recognition and buy-in to that, it will become quite valuable to the people who actually start to develop that learning and development passport. So really, in terms of next steps, I just wanted to challenge the community here, as well as my own humanitarian logistics community to collaborate. You know, there are many, many things that we can do, and I think we're, simply better together. So thanks very much.